Welcome in college baseball central fans in Texas. Jake McKeever, Joey Barnett, or Joey Barrett. Sorry about that. It's been a little bit of a time since we took a little bit of a sabbatical midweek. But A&M's number one. Texas is within shouting distance of first. Baylor's playing good baseball. There's a lot to catch up on. Your Islanders beat a Lamar team that was ranked in the top 25.
Yeah.
It's just been a crazy, crazy week in the state of Texas. As those of us who are joining us live or watching via YouTube see Joey get his camera set up.
Got a new iPad, so I'm getting oriented.
We wouldn't do any pre-show. We would just do our raw, unfiltered emotions. Joey, before I guess we jump into kind of the big dogs here, anybody kind of caught your eye in the last 3 weeks outside of Texas A&M, and Tech?
Let me think about that. I was about to say those are the big three. Lamar has been catching my eye, being nationally ranked, taking care of business until this weekend. But that's been the main team that I've been. UTSA is also another team that I've been watching closely too. They've been dominating AAC competition too.
Yeah, they actually hold the tiebreaker over ECU.
Yep.
I believe that they are a game up in the AAC. They've been playing good baseball. I know when they've been giving Texas State some fits. Man, what's been going on with that team? I feel like when they were in Houston, they were kind of the talk of the town. They got their teeth kicked in a little bit, and then ever since then, I think they're under 500 right now.
Yeah, they've been very inconsistent. I mean, one day they beat Texas, and then they come out flat the next game. It's very tough to gauge the Bobcats in a way. And, yeah, they are it's just so weird to see how they've been doing this season. Up and down and up and down.
That's almost a great segue into our first team that we're going to talk about, the Texas Longhorns. It feels like we're in almost a Groundhog Day scenario with them.
Yep.
They lose Friday night. Everybody freaks out. And then they quietly win the next two games. And it's like nothing ever happened. And then they drop midweeks every now and then. And when they do, everybody freaks out. But when they win, no one really says anything. I know you're kind of on the streets down there in Austin. What have kind of been the vibes around this team? As it seems like every single weekend we see fire David Pierce Friday night, and then he comes out and wins the next two games. Like it's just a crazy scenario. They have an RPI in the 70s. But again, they're second in the Big 12. So what do you think about this team? Do you think they're tournament ready? Like what are we looking at here?
I mean, it's really is an interesting thing to think about this Longhorn team. I mean, the vibes around the fan base are like most people are on that fire Pierce train and do not understand how much success Pierce has had. So, but I feel like that talk is kind of simmered after this TCU series. This TCU series is basically an elimination like we were talking about a while back. Whoever loses that series was going to be in big trouble. And I was about to say, last night's win over UT Arlington was very resounding. Home runs left and right. Home runs been the calling card of this Longhorn team this season. So I can't really say as to if this team is ready yet. It's just I think this is going to be a team that, depending on how they play in the Big 12 tournament, will be going to be as if this team will be able to make a run. But I'm starting to get this feeling that this Longhorn team might make an Ole Miss run from a couple years ago.
Joe, as I pull up the stats, when do you think the last time that they won a Friday night start was? Because LeVaron Johnson's been moved to Sunday.
In theory, they did win a Friday game against BYU, which was not.
Well, sorry, game one.
And I was about to say, let me think about this. Has to be Cal Poly at this point.
Texas Tech. Remember they won in that shootout. Yeah, LeBaron didn't pitch very good that game.
I think they chased him in the fourth inning.
They lost the Saturday game there. But if you remember, the week before they lost to LSU on Friday night. So they only have 3 wins on Friday nights. That really is kind of been a struggle for them. Um, LeBaron Johnson, I mean, it is really kind of more of the same from him, despite moving from Friday to Sunday. He gives you about 4 innings of just grinded out baseball. He'll
Yeah.
throw about 80 pitches. When he gets to 65, he starts to tire, which again, I think that's something that is very normal. It's just that's in the second or third inning usually. That's what's been so crazy about it. I don't know like what you can truly do if you're David Pierce with him because he's pitched better than a Sunday guy and he's pitched better than a Friday. Like he's not a Friday guy necessarily, but you know what you're going to get with him. It's 4 innings of long, drawn out baseball, around 80 pitches. He's going to struggle with walks there at the end. But I mean, where does this Texas team go from a pitching staff going forward? It seems like it's always one step forward, 2 step back with them. It seems like every time somebody has a good outing, you're like, okay, is he finally figuring it out? Or is it like, okay, is he due for a bad outing? Like, I mean, when you just look up and down this pitching staff, there's so many guys that you think are like supremely talented. And outside of Ace Whitehead, there really hasn't been a ton of consistency. I know Grubb's been good in that Friday night role, but outside of that, like, who do you really trust out of the bullpen?
Yeah, let me look up the numbers real quick.
Charlie Hurley, he's got an ERA over.
Gage Boehm has stepped up recently, so I can definitely.
Yeah, Gage Boehm is up there. He's thrown 32 innings. I think he's kind of starting to solidify his role, but again, Grant Fontenot is starting to solidify his role a little bit more.
Not the team anymore. Grant Fontenot got dismissed a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I guess I missed that.
Before the Houston series, it just came out of nowhere.
Heston Tolley, I don't think we've seen him in a long time.
Yeah, he's been up and down. Like when he has it going, he is probably the top arm in the bullpen, but he needs to develop consistency to be that guy kind of thing. But he's had some very nice moments this season.
Tanner Witt, do you think that's the end of Tanner Witt? He's only thrown 9 innings all season.
I don't feel good about like the way things have transpired with Witt, but I don't know. Like I feel like on one hand, I feel like he's being rested for future pro purposes, but on the other hand, he might actually be finished. But it's been very
especially for the amount of arms that they really have kind of rolled out there. I wouldn't say it's surprising to see Tanner Witt just because he had such a big fall off, but he can't be that much worse than what they've had run out there. Like,
yeah.
Again, this is totally speculation. We're not going through with Pierce into these bullpens. We don't know what he's looking like in these bullpens. We don't know what his arm health is at. But it's just kind of a weird situation where, again, I don't think he's earned the right to pitch more innings by any stretch of the imagination, but it feels like they are almost kind of running out of options there. And again, they never seem to play that perfect game. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah.
What really kind of sticks out to me. It seems like when the pitching does good, the hitting does bad. Like they never and again, you're not going to blow everybody out every game, but like an 8-2 game, you can't mix in something like that. Like that's the thing that really kind of scares me about that Texas team going forward is it seems like everything has to go right for them to win.
Yeah, so I got the bullpen numbers up. Duplantier has had an excellent run as of late, and he's starting to become a guy that could be trusted. Cade O'Hara had a really nice outing on Saturday, a converted position player turned pitcher. Basically, rode a lot of ground balls, post, rain delay, and sealed the victory for Texas. And but yeah, this season has been really like very whack-a-mole-ish. Like the pitching is on, hitting doesn't show up. Hitting puts up 10 runs, pitching gives up 11. So it's just been like string it all together. This Texas team can be very dangerous. They have beaten Tech.
They beat TCU. They beat a desperate TCU team. I mean,
Kansas State and Manhattan.
They're gonna. I think Porter Brown. He had the home run last night. I think he's going to kind of get rolling. I think Jack O'Dowd's too talented of a hitter to be hitting 183. I think he'll come around a little bit more. Gasparino at 264. I think that feels not necessarily disappointing because he's a freshman, but I think he's really kind of starting to figure it out and turn a corner. I mean, when I saw him in Houston, his swing looked night and day difference than what we saw at Minute Maid a couple weeks earlier. He's making adjustments. Jalen Flores is playing at a first-team All-Big 12. Jared Thomas just continues to impress every single step of the way. Peyton Powell takes quality at bats. Yeah, Baloo is starting to come around. So there's a lot to like.
Mm-hmm. And then another development from this weekend, Casey Borba came up with some really clutch hits for the Longhorns. I think he's going to probably be in the lineup going forward, which creates a very interesting conundrum because this weekend he took over Porter Brown's spot in the lineup. So it's going to be interesting how Brown gets inserted back in the lineup, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's even bigger is it moves Thomas to center field. I know that was kind of always the plan going into the season. Obviously, they had somebody step away from the program right before the season started that kind of forced Jared Thomas back to his original first base spot. But I really like the Texas defense with Jared Thomas in center field. I think he can kind of be more of a vocal leader from that spot. And I think that there's a lot of things to like about him being in center field.
Yep, for sure.
So Texas, like I said, they have an interesting slate down the stretch. They really feel like they have to win the Big 12 to get into the tournament. They're at OU this weekend, a midweek against a pesky Sam team that's already beat Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State at the Dish, at UCF, which is kind of turning into a Texas Tech type situation where it's tough to go win games down there in Orlando. And then a Achilles heel, if you will, of Texas athletics, Kansas in the back half. I know they've dominated Kansas in baseball, but this is a new and improved Kansas team. It's given a lot of teams fits. It really does feel like they have to take 2 of 3 against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and then sweep Kansas, take 2 of 3 from UCF, which again is a very, very tall task.
Yeah, that is a very tall task. Like, I've been paying close attention to Kansas this year, and they look like a much more vastly improved team that will be a very tough out. Same with UCF.
That is 9 wins. Well, hold on, let me do the math. Yeah, 9 wins across 4 series. I think that's the path. And again, we've seen it from Texas in the past. We saw it last year with Texas, where they kind of went on a roll there at the end. They swept West Virginia to win it all.
Too as well, yeah.
They're going to get the best shot from Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's playing their best baseball of the year. OU, I know it's a really big football rivalry. It's not as big of a baseball rivalry, I don't think. But again,
it isn't.
They haven't been in Norman in a few years because last time they played in Big 12 play, they moved it down to Dallas. Yeah, it's going to be at Dale Mitchell. So maybe some unfamiliar territory is I don't think they've played there since 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like when they went up in
COVID, and in 21-22 they were in Dallas and Arlington.
Yeah, so unless they have some like Eric Kennedy coming through again. I know he was with the program forever. Maybe he still has that.
Dylan Campbell's of the world.
I think that it's a really, really uphill battle for Texas. But here's the crazy part. I think if they win, they could probably sneak. Like, I think they're going to be a 2 seed, or they're going to be out, or they're going to be the last team in. I mean, they truly, because I feel like if they lose a series to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, they're out. But if they win those series, like, it'll shoot them up a little bit. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of track how Texas goes going forward.
The way I see it, it's going to take probably at minimum 3 of those 4 series to vault us back into 2. Because I currently have us being a 3, like a mid 3. Probably not last 4 in kind, but I was about to say if it really it'll come down to UCF in terms of whether this will be a tourney team or not is how I see it.
Maybe the most confusing team in the country up next, Texas Tech. They sit at 29-14, 12-9 in the Big 12. They have a series loss to Baylor, series loss at UCF, series loss to TCU, midweek losses against Arkansas, New Mexico, but they swept West Virginia last weekend. How do we feel about Texas Tech? Because I do not know how to think about this team.
I
which
struggled to think
confused
about
me.
that. Yeah, because I was working on the report cards the other day, and I was like, what do I even put without Tech? Because they have the best overall record, but they've lost some really like wild series. So it's just like I'm looking at the numbers right now, and it's like, I mean, Tech is Tech. They're going to hit the ball, but they need to get some pitching quick.
Yeah, they really need some. Here's the thing that really kind of worries me about them is it feels like they rely too much on certain guys, and when those guys don't deliver, that they kind of compound bad at bats. I think that's Kevin Bazell and Gavin Cash. Bazell's hitting 344. Kevin Cash is sitting 318. That was not where the average was to start the season. They've moved him around a ton. He bats leadoff for him now. TJ Pompey's been playing really good. Cade McGee. I think Owen Washburn and Drew Woodcocks, I think, are kind of the two other ones to watch. I think Gage Harrelson starts taking at bats, but again, their entire season, I think, is going to hinge on their pitching. And it's a pitching staff that really misses Mason Molina, I think, is kind of my assessment of them.
Yeah, because I'm trying to look at their future schedule up ahead. Where was I at? I lost track of
I got it. They're at Kansas this weekend. They play Oklahoma, who's number 1 in the conference. Oklahoma State at Oklahoma State, likely tournament team. And then they finish up with at Arizona State on a Thursday, UNLV on a Friday, at Arizona State. Oh, it's a doubleheader, so they don't even play Saturday.
Yeah.
I don't.
That's an interesting way to end the season.
Yeah, they get the Big 12 bye there at the end. They sit at 21-4 at Dan Law and 8-10 outside of it. And it's looking like every indication that they're going to go outside of it. 2-6 against 1 through 25. I think the craziest part is they have some bad losses, but those losses are really kind of turning out to be a lot better than at the time. Baylor has looked a lot better. I know that at the time that was a horrible, horrible loss, but Baylor is hovering right around 500. I don't think they're going to make the tournament, but it's not a 300 type loss or 200 type loss like they had if they would have played Baylor last year. I think Texas Tech has a very, very easy path into the tournament. And as long as the wheels don't fall off and they can kind of sit at around this, 4-3 mark going in, I think the Texas Tech has a chance to be in the tournament. I think that they're going to likely be a 1 or a 2, believe it or not.
I didn't even because I'm looking at the New Mexico game last night. I fell asleep when it was like 7-2 New Mexico.
No, they blew them out. They run-rolled them.
And I just looked at it. I'm just like, wow, this game got really ugly pretty quick.
And it wasn't at New Mexico. I would have given them a little bit of a pass if it was at New Mexico just because the higher elevation. It gets really windy out there. I had the CMS ID tell me that it's just like a complete 40, 50 mile an hour wind blowing out. It's not that. I don't know what to make of this Tech team. Yeah. I kind of have a good understanding of what Texas is, but this Tech team, it's like everything that I don't know where last week came from. That's what everybody who has had any kind of opinion good about Tech had been waiting for. And they really kind of showed out and dominated a West Virginia team that was playing really good baseball. I know that they lost Weatherholt, but again, I don't know what to make of this Texas Tech team.
That Tech team that was against West Virginia this weekend should be the Tech team that we should be seeing.
Yeah, if it's that Tech team, it is going to be a very, very scary Tech lineup. Moving on to another scary lineup, Texas A&M just continues to impress. Since we last talked, they swept Vanderbilt. They took 2 of 3 from Alabama. They had 13 runs last night against Houston. We won't talk about what their pitching staff had. How do you feel as an outsider about Texas A&M? Because I know for me, it's very easy to kind of point out flaws here and there. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, as kind of an outsider Longhorn guy, what are you seeing from this Texas A&M team?
It is, as a diehard Longhorn fan that grew up all things Longhorns, I could not be any more terrified because this A&M team is probably one of the most dangerous lineups I've seen in college baseball in a very long time. Literally every time I go on Twitter, there's always something about Montgomery going yard, Laviolette going yard, Grahovic going yard. So it's just like, I don't know who's going to stop this team, because this A&M team is like a generational team with a bunch of generational talents on it. It's
the balance is, I think, what really stands out to
Mhm.
me. I mean, Grahovic's right-handed, Laviollette's left-handed, Montgomery and Appel are switch hitters, Hayden Schott's a lefty, Ted Burton. They just, every single part of this lineup is just so tough to navigate. And here's the scary part is I think that they have a chance to even get better.
Yep.
Travis Chestnut, I think is still, I think he's still a little bit injured, but he's still playing just off the charts at second base, which I think was the only kind of glaring hole. Caden Sorrell has been taking better at bats against lefties going forward. Even just little things like that. I mean, they just continue to progress and progress and progress. And we're running out of, I think, superlatives for the A&M team. The only thing that really kind of worries me, and again, this is just an external factor, this is nothing that they haven't shown us, is the bullpen coming into the season was supposed to be kind of the weak spot. And they have a bunch of guys who are having generational type years. I mean, Evan Ashenbach's one of the better relievers in the country. We knew what he was going to be coming in, but Chris Cortez continues to impress. Shane Deho's taken great steps forward. Weston Moss, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me to see Weston Moss kind of move into that Sunday role as Lampkin has struggled the last 2 weeks.
Lampkin has struggled immensely.
He pitched last night, and it was only 15 pitches. And, Slosh honestly doesn't sugarcoat it with anything. So he had said that, it was only because Lampkin threw 30 pitches on Sunday, and he needed, instead of just having him waste a bullpen, might as well get some, quality live innings. He pitched all right. I think he only faced 3 or 4 batters. There was one hit allowed. But again, I think Weston Moss has really kind of taken that step forward, and he looks like a starting pitcher. He carries himself like a starting pitcher. I think that there's a lot to like about having Weston Moss be that. And again, not necessarily if he starts on Sunday, but again, in tournament time, you always want to have a 4-starter just in case you kind of get on the wrong side of that bracket. And I think that A&M, honestly, they've hit the ball so well that they really haven't needed to have that long, extended bullpen arm. It's been Evan Ashenbach, but again, I don't think he is going to be as effective as a starter. But again, I think Ryan Prager is going to have a bounce-back game. He really struggled against Bama last weekend. But again, stuff is kind of weird when you get in those rain delays because, he was on short rest by pitching on Thursday, and then they moved it back to Friday. So again, I'm not saying that that messes with him or that's an excuse or anything, but I think that is something that you have to track going forward. But again, the other thing that really worries me about A&M is I think that they really haven't faced a quote unquote like elite level arm yet. And that's the one thing that really kind of worries me is I think the Hagen Smith is we're going to know a lot about, the approach that they take. Because again, we saw it with Oregon State where they made adjustments, got Hagen Smith out late and then kind of went to work. Can A&M kind of do that going forward?
Yeah, that was what I was thinking. For what my concern about A&M is just like the adversity factor. They have just been breezing by everybody, but when they actually get to like a super regional, I feel like that might come back to haunt them, so to speak.
Well, they come back a lot. That's the one thing that's even crazier is they've come back in so many games. Think of all the midweek games that they should have lost where they get like that big hit late. The Bama game, they were down 5-0 and you blink. They score so quickly, you almost forget that they're down in some of these games.
Yeah, it's just like once they turn it on.
Yeah, they do it a variety of different ways too. There's, I feel like a month ago we were saying, they scored too many in the first inning and then kind of go to bed. Well, now they're making adjustments in their second at bat, coming through and taking better adjustments to chase guys there. We said, they only really throw that one big punch, and then after that, they kind of, it's really easy for them to compound bad at bats. Well, they scored in like 7 innings last night, so there really isn't a ton of criticism. And again, I feel like we're almost nitpicking talking about the flaws of Texas A&M because again, I think the only thing is, the superstition of being number one overall. And again, I am really, really intrigued to see how Max Wiener does with this staff this weekend. Because again, Georgia is very, very comfortable playing a 12-8, 17-9 type of game. And I know Lindsey Nelson gets a lot of shit for being the smallest ballpark, but A&M really they sometimes turn it into a cracker jack. There's been a ton of balls where you're like, yeah, I didn't think that would have the juice to get out, and then it clears it by 30 feet. So it'll be interesting to see because the ball just seemed to fly out of Bluebell. And is it because A&M has all these great power flats? Probably, but again, it is kind of one of those underrated small ballparks.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Moving on to TCU, they sit at 24-15, 8-13 in Big 12 play. They dropped a midweek to Abilene Christian and a midweek to UT Arlington. Outside of that, they're undefeated in OOC. Non-conference RPI of 5, strength of schedule of 49. They are 3-5 against 1 through 25. Am I crazy to think that if TCU beats Kansas State this weekend, takes care of business against Baylor, takes care of business against New Mexico State, and goes 3-3 across Kansas State and West Virginia, that they're in the tournament?
It's not crazy. I just don't know if they'll be able to do it because what I saw on Saturday and Sunday out of TCU was a team that was starting to see the wheels come off. Like, they could not hit. They could not. I mean, they did pitch better than they have been, but it is not looking pretty for the Horned Frogs. Let's just leave it at that.
They do get Kansas State at home.
Yeah.
Baylor isn't too far of a drive. They get New Mexico State at home. They get Baylor in a midweek at home, and they get West Virginia at home. So that's 3 road games for the rest of the season. They have been pretty good at Lupton, I would say. Mm-hmm. They used a lot of Lupton magic early. I don't think it's deja vu like last year where they because honestly, people forget that they kind of struggled in May. Like at this point, they were really a lot higher. They're 17-4 at home. They're 7-11 away from Lupton. I think TCU is a team that I think you can kind of buy stock and buy low, sell high. I really do kind of believe that. They have Peyton Tolley that's going to go on Friday night. They can figure out the Saturday and Sunday stuff. I think that they're very, very close to being a good team again.
Yeah, I was about to say, I really was impressed with how Tolley pitched on Friday. Pretty much made the Longhorns look like they did nothing of note. So if they can just get another quality guy in on Saturday, and then I don't even think they need a Sunday guy, so to speak, but they need a second starter to step up and be that guy because I think it was Saturday that Rodriguez went 1 2/3 innings. Yeah.
They need somebody outside of Ben Abel. I noticed that he pitches a ton for them. I think that if they can get a bullpen guy going, like a Zach Morris type, I think that'll go a really long way. I think Klecker is, I wouldn't say it's a sophomore slump, but he has kind of been humbled a lot. I think that there's a lot of there's a lot of guys that I think are really, really close to breaking out. Coyer, Camden Parker, I think is another one. Zach Morris, Ben Hampton, I think to some extent. I think that they're so close. I think they just get a little bit more production at the plate. Curtis Byrne and Carson Bone can kind of turn it on a little bit more. Ryder Robinson at third. I don't know how much he's going to be in the lineup going forward. But again, if they could, I think that they're so close that it would really kind of scare me if they got in it again. I mean, there's no way they get hot and go to Omaha twice, right? Like, what if?
Yeah. And that's another team that I'm like TCU is probably a team I don't see right now, but I can definitely see them getting on a really, really hot stretch if they put it all together. I mean, they got experience up and down and just need to piece it all together and they'll be good.
All right, Joey, we're running up here on time. It's Lamar Southland to lose, right? I think that everybody feels comfortable with Lamar being the best team in the Southland. I think that they honestly, with the, I know that the Islander loss kind of puts a damper in that, but I think that they really had an outside shot to be a 2 seed. I think that now that they're kind of going to live as, I know in our bracketology, I said they're going to be a 3 at the 8M regional. I think that that's where they're kind of going to live. But I wanted you to give me a percentage. East Carolina and UTSA are tied. East Carolina is a top 10 team, likely a host. What chance do you give UTSA to win the American outright?
Ooh, I know they got some tough games coming up because they had a relatively easy start outside of East Carolina. I would say probably 45% as of this moment.
Wow.
Yeah, because I think, yeah. And it's that high because of the fact that they took 2 out of 3 from East Carolina. East Carolina.
They sit tied.
If I'm just thinking from a 40, if it tied?
They're tied. They're both tied at 11-4 right now.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think the Pirates will eventually usurp the Roadrunners, but UTSA is also getting hot too. I'm trying to get the schedule to load up, but I'm having some technical.
So you're going to stick with the 25?
No, I said 45.
Oh, sorry, the 45?
Yeah, it's 55 ECU, 45 UTSA. Okay, finally.
I was going to go 80 ECU. 80-20.
It would have been 25 if not for the head-to-head tiebreaker. So let's see. They got Rice, who is not good at all. So advantage Roadrunners. Wichita State has been up and down, so that could go either way. South Florida.
They just got swept by ECU, too.
Yeah. And
ECU has Memphis, South Florida, Tulane, and Rice.
And I feel like,
and again, Charlotte, Tulane, FAU, those are kind of the flagships, if you will. I don't see it. The Charlotte. Let's see. Yeah, they really should have swept Memphis. They really should have swept UAB. Yeah, they have a Rice this weekend.
Wichita State,
South Florida. Yeah, so all the tough teams.
Yeah, it's like it could go either way.
I just want to say 90 ECU 10. And well, I mean, this will probably, we can clip this, Joey, but this will probably one where we get clowned because UTSA wins it. But I think 90% ECU. So I'm sticking to your. So you're sticking to your 45.
Keep in mind, here's a caveat here. I'm a San Antonio guy through and through, so there's a little bit of bias with my 2-0 teams and players. So I'm gonna keep my confidence up in UTSA. I think it's gonna be UTSA has a 45% chance because I've seen them this season, and what I have seen, I like how they're playing as of late, and they'll only keep getting better because UTSA is one of those teams that has always shown to get better as the season goes on. So I think it's probably going to be ECU's conference to lose, but UTSA has been very impressive in conference play. So I think they have a very good puncher's chance at holding on.
All right, perfect. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. 2 notes. Want to give a little shout out to the Baylor Bears, who were on quite a nice run there. I know it ended last weekend with Kansas when they lost 2-3, but just want to congratulate Baylor. I know that's a fan base that really has struggled the last few years. So I really want to give my kudos to Baylor there. Lastly, want to give a shout out to SFA, who is petitioning to join the Southland from the WAC. So hopefully they can get back in with the Southland again. Selfishly, I want them to stay in the WAC so I can kind of see some of those teams.
I have my opinions on the thought of all the teams returning to the Southland, but I'm not going to say it. I have mentioned a few tidbits about it on Twitter, but I wasn't a fan of Lamar coming back, and I will not be a fan of SFA or ACU or UTA potentially coming back because teams that left for greener pastures, the Southland should not be letting them back in with open arms. I just can't.
All right. Well, Joey, thanks for joining me again, right at that 35 mark. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, we'll see you next week.
See y'all.